Thanks for listening to the Who's Flying the Plane podcast. I'm Alex, and I'll be interviewing creative people about what they do, why they do it, and how they made it into a career. My guest today is comedian Ali Woods, who you may recognise from his viral Instagram comedy sketches, or you may have heard him on his own podcast, All I Do Is Fail. I was actually listening to your podcast the other day, the newest one, and I feel like you guys both missed out on something you were discussing, whether there are more doors or wheels in the world.
What do you think?
Well, I thought that you guys seemed pretty confident that it was doors. And I was thinking there's so many vehicles that because you said, oh, well, cars, you got four wheels, but 5 doors. But I feel like you've left out every skateboard, scooter, motorbike, thousands of these things.
It's an excellent point. So I think I've changed back to wheels. I feel like Tom was really confident coming in. And so I sort of thought, oh, what an idiot. He's got the answer. And then he didn't have the answers. I was like, oh, right. But I was still like, okay, it must be doors. And then I chatted to another friend who listens to the podcast, and he's like, it's got to be wheels. But then he was also saying that, maybe cogs count as wheels. And if cogs count as wheels, then there's loads. But I was like, you can't have that. That's too far.
I think, you had Phoebe on there saying that doors on an advent calendar count as doors, which I think is really pushing it. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. I felt like, I'm gonna stick with wheels. That's my official answer to that question.
I went with wheels as well. I'd love it to be some sort of Rorschach test, like a wheels person or a doors person tells a lot about you. But I don't think it's that deep. I'd love it to be like, wheels because you're adventurous. You like to go places. That's why you think there must be more wheels. Whereas if you're doors, like you're very shut off. You don't like being vulnerable. And so I think I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to say I'm a wheels person, and that there's no right answer. It's just there are wheels and there are doors persons.
That's kind of reminding me of that. Have you ever heard that theory that you're either a rat or a pig? Have you heard this?
neither of them sound that nice.
Well, that's the thing. Like you're not allowed to get.
This is my dating life.
You're not allowed to get offended by it because they're both pretty harsh things. But it's about about like the kind of face shape that you have. And someone in an office I used to work in taught me about it. And it's basically, do you have like a roundish face or a more pointy one? And I think by that...
I've heard that with horses and plates. That's what I've heard.
Horses and plates?
Yeah. I got a horse face or a plate face.
What would you go for?
For me, I think I'm slightly more horse. Depends how many cookies I've been eating that week.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think I'm a rat face person, to be
horse, fair. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going rat, so therefore horse, I think.
Yeah.
On your scale.
Yeah.
But yeah, your podcast is called All I Do Is Fail, and I like how far you've already strayed from that kind of manifesto for it, because I haven't heard you talk about a personal failure on any of the episodes that I've heard.
Because we just crush it. That's why. It's so annoying. Every day I'm like, another week of just absolutely smashing life. This is so
since you started it, you've just figured it all out. You've answered enough, agony uncle questions and stuff now that you've reached the point where you've just got it under control. You're not failing anymore at all.
Mate, we're goats, man. Don't matter about that, man. Yeah, we've perfected failure, so it doesn't feel like it anymore. I suppose that's the big thing, isn't it? I mean, when we started our podcast, it was like, with the thinking of let's get people talking about their failures. And we started a way ago, like 2017. But we didn't those creative projects where you don't start them properly and you just sort of go, this would be a fun idea. Let's do one and then maybe do another. And so for years we had people coming on talking about failures, mainly comedians, talking about the time they failed, try and do one personal, one career. But then in the lockdown, we just stopped getting guests on because I'm not going to organise a guest every week. We're not even in there with us. And then we just enjoyed chatting amongst ourselves. So,
I feel like,
I was like, get more airtime for my voice. This is great.
I feel like now it's kind of Tom ranting about everyday problems and you sort of allow, commenting on it. I feel like that's the basic structure of the conversations at the moment. He seems he's always quite he's not angry, but like he's ready to rant off about something, and you're there to sort of calm him down a bit. I feel like that's the dynamic at the moment.
Yeah, but I think, bless you, Alex, for saying there's any semblance of structure. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I think there is a little bit that of personality clashes. Of yeah, he's quite a sort of an anxious person, and also quite a sort of, standards must be met person as well. Of like, you just can't do that. Like, and I'm more of a person of like, yeah, well, ultimately these people don't care about their job. That's why they've done it badly. Like, you just get on with things. And then Phoebe just tries to call us out on being idiots. So that's that is the loose plan, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, I like that position. I love the I do sort of love what it's become, and to be fair, I actually, despite there being no structure and no ideas, it's actually the best it's ever been.
Yeah. Have you found that people are enjoying it more now than you're just sort of being yourselves and just having a chat?
Oh yeah, it's getting more popular, and it's getting people coming in with more positive reviews. I think it's one of those where I think we were trying to be something we weren't before, and just wanted to have a podcast, and now it's become more about what our lives are and our personalities, and we lean into that more, and that's more enjoyable, and it's more about podcast audience interaction, which people enjoy much more than sort of more of a straight-laced interview. I think this would be something I'd maybe want to get better at, but I don't think I'm a good interviewer, and B, like, really interested in being a great interviewer right now. Like, I don't want to be known as like an interviewer. I want to be the guy being interviewed. So that's like, so what I have a habit of is asking someone a question, and then I just keep talking. So I just go, what do you think of that? Because anyway, I thought that and then in my head, I'm like, I've asked a question, I've been good, but I've rewarded myself with talking more. So thank you for having me on this, Alex. I'll tell you what this is as well, is that every podcast I get invited onto, people always end and then go, I think that's the longest episode we've ever recorded. Yeah. They never say, I think that's the best, or like the most insightful. They just say, yeah, I mean, that went on, didn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm a regular podcast listener, and your episode's coming in at like an hour and a half and stuff like that. That's, an hour longer than most people's podcasts, isn't it? So you've got...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that you're just taking it as a compliment. It's just an observation. You're like, oh, thank you. Like...
Big believer in quantity over quality, mate. Don't worry about that. In fairness, I think that's where, if we had more money and time, the way that podcast probably will develop. And if you want to listen to it, check it out. All I do is fail. But the way I see it developing is eventually it will have a designated sort of more ruthless editor who will shrink it to a more, maybe how do we say this, manageable size. But at the moment, I think I personally enjoy just sort of rocking up every week and chatting nonsense for a while. And then also the sort of advice we've been given is that people just always want more. So I think the best thing you can do is offer people two things. So offer the more consumable length of anything for your less sort of hugely invested listeners and people who just sort of enjoy it might as well. But then there'll always be people who just want more and more minutes, more and more stuff. And so give them that. So maybe it will develop into maybe two types, but yeah, no, well, thank you for listening, Alex. That's boosted the listeners up a couple, so that's nice. So that's up by 100%, which is great to hear.
How did you meet Tom in the first place? Was that someone you met on the comedy circuit?
Yeah, so we met getting knocked out of a competition. So there's a competition, I don't know if you know it, in comedy. It's called So You Think You're Funny. And it's one of the few remaining sort of prestigious competitions, because I think they went back when there was only about 50 comedians in the whole country. Now there's like 50,000. Back when there was a couple comedy competitions. This was one of them. It's been going for like 30 odd years. And now there's every competition for everything. There's like South East Kent under 25s comedian of the season or something like that, and everyone's got everything on their poster. And I came third in that myself. Don't want to brag, but we got So You Think You're Funny, and you can only, the thing with this one is you can only enter it once in your life, and you get 7 minutes to try and be as funny as possible. And me and Tom met because we were both in the semi-finals of that, and that took place in Edinburgh, and we both got knocked out of that at that stage, and decided to get drunk and chat about comedy and our lives. And he was like, we need to diversify. Podcasting's a big thing. And I'm like, yeah, man, sounds great. We should do a podcast. It's like, okay, sick. And that was sort of how it happened. And then we decided what that podcast would be. And he had the original idea of failure. And then we actually predate the sort of Elizabeth Day How to Fail podcast, which is obviously quite big now. Yeah. But we'll take credit for that one as well. But I mean, but we started that way ago. Just before podcasting became such a mainstay for comedians. No, it was still in that time where people were sort of scoffing at starting your own podcast. I think there's a lot of like that British mentality when it comes to anything creative, where you scoff at people sort of trying to be ambitious or like trying to connect with an audience. It's like, no, you should be self-deprecatory to the bitter end. You should be on stage accidentally in front of 10,000 people talking about how you're an idiot. That is comedy. Yeah. Like it's not. You're not supposed to have channels or engagement with people who like you. So we did that, and actually in that competition, only one went through in each semi-final, and so we weren't that one. And there was about like 6 to 8 of us in that semi-final, and a couple of wild cards went through as well. And we didn't even get the wild card either. So we were mid-table at best in our semi-final, and we thought it was a good place to start in terms of failure.
Yeah, that's quite a nice sort of. I can see where the theme for the podcast, all I do is fail, comes from the back of a failure, and then you've turned it into a success. That's like a motivational speech you should be giving.
Success is a very strong word there, Alex. I will tell you that it's to turn it into something. I think that's more like it. But yeah, no, I do think I should give motivational speeches. To be fair, I have loads of motivational quotes on my wall, and I'm a huge deal, so I think probably that's what's needed.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask a little bit about how you first got your start in comedy. So do you remember your first gig and what sort of things you were talking about on stage back then?
Oh mate, 100%. First gig was at university. So in terms of how I got into comedy, I need to say the main thing is my dad. My dad got me into comedy, into watching loads of comedy shows, and he was himself a big he's still alive, and just his big joker. Yeah, I know, right? They're dropping that news just now. It's a shame he's still alive, because it means that I've not got a hook for my show. So it's like, you know what I mean? Dad, you're so selfish. So he is still alive, unfortunately, and he's a big joker. So I always wanted to be like that sort of life of the party, and make people laugh and be the funniest. That was a big deal. For as long as I can really remember, I don't really remember a time. I always wanted to be good at football and funny, and I can't remember anything else. So I suppose I am quite distinct in that way from a lot of other straight men, that I would want that. So that makes me quite interesting.
It's your USP.
And then, exactly, yeah, people are afraid to say nowadays. And then I remember my first gig. I started doing improv comedy at uni because I wanted to protect my virginity, and it failed. Classic. And I really enjoyed doing that. I really enjoyed doing improv. I just joined the Comedy Society, and it was something you could get involved in pretty easy. But I didn't do stand-up. I wanted to do stand-up. I was just sort of scared. And then there was a combination of two things that got me into doing stand-up, my first gig. One was I was a bit miserable with how my life was going. I was a bit upset that I didn't feel like I was achieving my potential. Achieving potential is sort of a huge deal for me. I really hate sort of wasted potential, especially when you've lived such a nice life that I've had, and to not sort of try hard.
Right.
And,
okay.
My mum was big into that sort of no laziness, and then so I did. So I made a list of stuff that I could do to try and give my life some meaning, and one of them was stand up. And then the other thing that actually got me into stand up was seeing people do it badly, like student comedy. I saw people who were rubbish at stand up, and I never got when people were like, I was inspired to do stand up when I saw, Mickey Flanagan crash it in front of the O2 or something. And I'm like, that to me was always so daunting, because that reinforced the belief that like stand up comedians are these divine people that get picked, they make it all off the top of their head, and they're just, you can never touch them. They'll just be hilarious all the time. And then when I saw people going up there being rubbish, I was like, that's so good. They're doing it. They're doing it even though they don't have any jokes. And I am here like a coward. I'm sitting here like a coward because I'm scared. And they look at the bravery they have of not being good. And I felt like such a loser. And so I was like, right, well, I'll just do it then. I'll just be okay with maybe not being brilliant. So I did my first gig, and that was at the university, and it was in front of a very lovely crowd of students from the Comedy Society who were just happy with whatever, they just wanted people to see that they were into comedies, basically. They're just desperate for identity. It's like, ha ha, we're the comedy crowd. That's us, So that was lovely. But I remember being sort of disappointed by it, and it went well, and I was talking about sort of quite original niche topics. I think I had like stuff about Tinder and dating and things like that, so it's sort of like a lot of stuff that other comedians were sort of afraid to talk about, but not me. And yeah, I remember that. I remember that was my main bit. I remember was I got up a picture of my Tinder photo and talked about how I'd got lots of matches in Scotland and not in England, and why that was.
Is it the red hair? I'm sure that's what people think.
So I think that was part of it. It was a very silly photo. It was like me in my kitchen at uni with like a shaved head, with chopping onions on a chopping board with goggles on, so I didn't cry. and because this was also back in the day when like Tinder and all those dating apps now are just the done way to meet people. But I think this must have been 2014. And I think this was when Tinder was just coming out, and it was still sort of seen as this silly game that would probably last about 6 months before everyone was like, okay, well, obviously we're not going to just robotically match each other on dating apps. And then it became like, oh yeah, that's exactly like that's the best way to do it. Like once everyone gets over how cringe it is, like it means you meet loads of people. So I remember talking about that, but I was a bit upset because like my mates came in, some mates from uni came along, and that was nice of them, and went out afterwards. But I didn't really want to go out because I wasn't really feeling in the mood, because I was not happy that it didn't go incredibly. Like it went well, but I was hoping that like I would get this sort of standing ovation. People would come up to me and say, "Oh, mate, Ali, that I thought I'd seen comedy, and then I saw that, and that you are the next huge thing." And I just didn't get any of that. Everyone was just like, "Well done, mate," and that was that. Because it would have been very average at best anyway. So, but that's how I remember it going. And then, so there was sort of two critical points. There was that one where I did my first gig, and then I didn't gig much, I just now and then with the uni. But then when I came back to London is when I started actually gigging like every week, and that was again sort of due to that fact that I didn't sort of like my life, and I thought I was missing out on living the life that I'd sort of dreamed of. And so I started gigging because it was just something to do that I thought might be enjoyable. And then I sort of never looked back.
Cool. So what sort of track were you on before you made this? You was talking about not being happy with your life. What sort of track were you on before you decided to change and go down the comedy route?
I think in those two examples, the first one, I had come from a very academic school. It was like a grammar school. It was like one of the free ones where like everyone there was just, we're all here to be doctors and lawyers and medics, and that's it. All boys, very competitive, very high achieving. And I'd just been brought up in that world, and so I'd got good results. And then I went to, but I didn't go to Oxbridge. That was my first sort of failure. When I didn't go to Oxbridge, I thought I'd be able to, and I just wasn't good enough and wasn't into my subject enough, Went to York and had a great time there. Really loved it. Had a great first year, and just basically spent the time partying, hanging out with mates, having just like the best ever time, And then in the second year, things started to move on, and I was still sort of doing that, and it all just became a bit stale. It became quite boring and repetitive, and suddenly people were like, well, now we're in second year, you've got to start thinking about jobs and applying for stuff. And I was quite dispassionate about my life. I'd also broken my leg at the time. I was told that I'd not be able to run anymore. And so I should give up running, give up football, which was a huge deal for me. So I was sort of upset about that. So that was part of the list. I made a list of like sports that didn't need running, and I was like, I'm going to be the best darts player ever. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to just be sick at darts. I'm going to be with the darts groupies. I'm going to be at the Ali Pally. Everyone's going to be like, Ali's fucking sick. They're going to call it the Ali Pally because I'm Ali, But fortunately for everyone, didn't have to do that because I went and got a second opinion, and it wasn't that harsh in the second time around. But so I just felt like I had a stagnant life. The girl that I was really into sort of didn't like me back, and that was I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but it's quite torturous. When you're sort of having an on-off thing with someone that in my heart of hearts, looking back, really they weren't that into me, but they would just sort of now and then would pick me up and put me down.
Oh man,
Yeah, but it's just one of those things, and I'm sure I've messed with people's heads in that way. I'm in the past, so we're all like 19 at the time as well, so I get it. But so I just felt like in that instance I had my fun and life had come back, and it was like when you're at a party and you just realise it's time to go, and that's how it felt. It's not that the music's not playing, it's not that there aren't drinks still flowing, it's not that there aren't people still around, but you're just looking around being like, this no longer is what I want to be doing. And so that's how I felt, and so I felt like I needed to get life back. And then the second time was I'd come back from uni and I'd gone back to live with my parents. Unfortunately, I'm from North London as well, so I was sort of in London. I didn't have to go. I felt for these people who had to go back to some like village where they didn't like the people they went to school with and stuff like that, So I was fortunate in that, but I was just back at home, and I didn't know what I wanted to. I still sort of wanted to work in advertising. I got rejected from loads of advertising jobs. I then wanted to do. I thought about doing comedy, and I was like, maybe I'll get a part-time job and then do comedy. And my mum was like, no way, that's happening. You need to get a real job. So I was like, okay, fine. And then. So I ended up getting this like internship in executive search, which is basically fancy recruitment. Hated it. I was fortunate that a mate of mine had got me the job, and so he was there. But otherwise, the company and the boss was rubbish. And I just sort of again had one of those moments where you just sort of you look at your life objective, you're like, I hate this life. Like, this is rubbish. Like, you're not appreciative of other things. And I was just like, I'm working a job I don't like. I'm living with my parents, and I've. After all that sort of hope and build up through my teens of thinking I was special, I'm just now sort of sitting here like any other schmuck, just doing nothing, sort of wasting it, And so I think then at that point I was like, I made these lists. I was like, what's two things you want to do? One of them was be a comedian, and one of them was be a football journalist. As I said, just going back to those two very basic things I'm into, right? You must get people on here who are like, I was inspired by the works of Dali and something like that. No, I like Man United and pissing myself. So
there's the quote that I'm going to promote this with.
Yeah, don't worry, that's on my that is on my Hinge actually, to be fair. But so I had these little cards, and I wrote out football journalist and comedian, and I thought, right, it is as basic as steps as possible. Just fill out cards for the route to get to these things. So with comedy, I wrote do open mics, do well in competitions, get an agent, get on TV, professional comedian. Football journalist, I wrote write articles for free, write articles for some money, write articles full-time for full-time money, football journalist. That was it. I just wanted to make it as basic as possible to make it look like it was far more achievable,
right? Yeah.
Than some just intangible thing of being a comedian. So I just went, right, I'm going to do those first two things. So I just started doing open mic comedy, and I just started writing articles for free, and that was it. And then I couldn't do both, and preferred the comedy, and so I just was like, right, I'm on the way of that now. And that was that.
If you go over to the Who's Flying the Plane YouTube channel, you can watch the latest episodes of In the Studio, our video series talking to artists and creatives about their craft and showing the environments they work in. All of Series 1 is now available to watch, and the first episode of Series 2 is available now. And if you keep an eye out, they'll be uploaded every other Friday. So just go onto YouTube and search for Who's Flying the Plane, or you can follow the link in the description for this episode. Halfway up the ladder that you've sort of made for yourself there, haven't you? Because I guess you're sort of looking for TV stuff at the moment. Is that fair to say? Or have you made an appearance?
Yeah, no TV work. I'm getting close. I'm sort of, I think I'm sort of jumping round the agent and the TV steps. I think when I did these lists in 2015, the TV was a lot more important for how to be a professional entertainer, whereas now obviously the internet and social media is come. If I'd have done those lists now, I might have written something different in terms of getting this many followers or whatever. So I still don't have an agent. I've never had I've not really had much interest from any agencies. No big agencies, no nothing. But it hasn't sort of prevented me from going further towards the idea of being able to give up the day job full time. So I am, getting closer, and it's something that you just got to sort of. I'm not a big believer in vision boards because I don't like the specificity of it. I don't have a specific dream like live at the Apollo or an Edinburgh Award win or something like that. I think some people are like that. Some people are driven by that, and it's fair play to them. But I prefer the sort of bigger stuff of like work hard, work at something you enjoy, and then ultimately whatever the end product is, you'll have enjoyed your life and you'll have used your potential. So I don't worry too much about the specific thing, because also I think you come off a live Apollo, that was brilliant, what's next? That's just the way my brain works. So I don't really want to feel like one specific objective is going to make me happy. That's why I kept the sort of things at the end, just football journalist and professional comedian, as sort of quite vague.
Ali, what would you like to offer up as your Who's Flying the Plane hidden gem?
Okay, so this is really, really unhelpful, but but I think it's something that you can't watch anymore. But if you can find it, let me know, because I want to watch it again. There was this TV show on BBC Three years ago in the noughties, and it only ran for one season. It was 6 episodes long, and it was called Mouth to Mouth. Have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of it.
Okay. Fuck's sake, Alex. Sorry, cut out. Thank you.
You got to sell it to me, though. Point. Sell it to me.
Yeah. So this is some of the best TV I've ever watched in my life still, and I don't know. I hope the writers have gone on to create big things, because I don't know what happened to it afterwards, but. If you can find it, it's still on the BBC website or the iPlayer website as a thing that existed. So it's not, you ever have those things where you think, did that even happen? Like kids' TV, where you go back and you think, was that real? Did I dream that? So it did happen. But what it was 6 episodes, and they were 6 interlinking stories from 6 very different people. And instead of the action playing out, they would be like monologues by each person, and they would come up to the camera and say it at different junctures throughout one episode. So just after the thing had happened, they'd be talking about it, like basically you were like their diary. And it was incredible. It was so good. And I remember as well, at that time, before there was like the idea of like quotas or different voices or something like that, like it genuinely just was a diverse piece as well. Like one of the episodes was on a gay footballer, which even now is still like quite a taboo topic. I mean, there's literally no open gay footballers in the UK.
Yeah.
A professional. And I think this must have been I think this show might have been sort of, it's 10 to 15 years ago is where we're looking. And if you can find it, then let me know, because it was brilliant. And I had no idea who the actors are. I had no idea who wrote it. I think I might have emailed the person who wrote it at the time, being like, really loved your show, and I want to get into TV work. Do you have any tips? I don't think they ever emailed back. Well, they never emailed back. But but that TV show is very, very niche and very, very excellent. And it never had a second season. I don't know what it was. But it was absolutely brilliant. So if you can find Mouth to Mouth,
I mean,
then watch it. I implore you. And you have to watch it in sequence as well. Try and watch episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't watch clips because it will not have the same effects.
I know you've got a live version of your podcast coming up and some tour dates. So if you want to, I'll open the floor for you to tell the listeners what you've got coming up and where they can see you live.
Yeah, of course. So if you are a fan of All I Do Is Fail, or you want to check out the podcast, or just check out, as I've billed it, sort of me laughing at my own jokes, then Thursday, 31st of March at the Bill Murray will be part of the podcast festival they got going on there. 8 p.m. slot they've given us, prime time. I mean, what a terrible decision that is. But we will be there. You can get tickets on the All I Do Is Fail social medias or on the Bill Murray website. So All I Do Is Fail social medias, AIDIFPod, AIDIFPOD. On all good social medias, and then on the Bill Murray pub website you can find those. Also, I have my debut show. It's going to be called Worst Friends, and it is going to be debuting at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August. So if you are there, check me out, Ali Woods Worst Friends. And if you follow me on social media, Ali Woods Gigs, ALIWOODS GIGS, Ali Woods Gigs, then you will find other sort of preview dates that I've got going on. I'm always around in London, and I'm also going to Brighton and to Hastings and to Nottingham. So if you're in any of those parts, and to Edinburgh soon. So if you're in any of those parts, check me out. I'm not going to obviously come up, say hi or anything. I've got things going on, but by all means come, pay a ticket, sit there, watch. But obviously I will. Thank you. I'm very desperate for attention. So that's my plug, Alex. Was that okay?
That's perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to me, Ali. And best of luck for the new show.
Thank you for having me, Alex Wilson. I really appreciate being on Who's Flying the Plane podcast, and I look forward to many more episodes to come. You've got a great podcast here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.